Welcome to the Daily Globe. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. Canada has redrawn the map of global steel trade, unveiling a fortress-like policy to shield its steel industry from a hostile global environment. In a world where economic alliances are constantly shifting, this bold move signals a dramatic shift in how nations defend their industries. The Canadian government is no longer content to play by the old rules, instead choosing to set new boundaries that prioritize national strength and resilience. Prime Minister Mark Carney's announcement in Hamilton, Ontario, is more than a trade adjustment. It's a declaration of economic sovereignty. Standing before a crowd of steelworkers and business leaders, Carney emphasized the need for Canada to chart its own course in an increasingly unpredictable global market. His words echoed through the halls of industry, signaling a new era of assertiveness and self-determination. The new policy erects a steel curtain around Canada, responding directly to escalating American tariffs and the threat of foreign market flooding. This protective barrier is designed not only to safeguard Canadian jobs, but also to ensure the long-term survival of a vital national industry. It's a defensive maneuver, but also a statement of intent. Canada will not be a passive player in the global economic arena. This move disrupts decades of seamless steel flow between Canada and the US, shattering a symbol of continental cooperation. For years, the border was almost invisible to steel, with materials and products moving freely to fuel North America's growth. Now that era has come to an abrupt halt, replaced by uncertainty and tension. Detroit's automakers, long reliant on Canadian steel, now face supply chain chaos and soaring costs. The ripple effects are immediate. Factories scramble to find new suppliers, production lines slow, and workers worry about their jobs. The interconnected economies of the two nations are suddenly at risk, with livelihoods hanging in the balance. The shock is a stark reminder: no trading partnership is immune to the forces of nationalism and self-preservation. Even the closest allies can become competitors when their core industries are threatened. The trust built over decades can be tested in a matter of days, as each country looks inward to protect its own. Canadian steel producers hail the move, but industries on both sides of the border are anxious about the future. For some, it's a moment of triumph and renewed hope. For others, it's a time of deep uncertainty. The decisions made today will shape the economic landscape for years to come, affecting workers, families, and entire communities. This is a story with global ramifications, forcing us to confront the new realities of a world where nations look inward to protect their own interests. As countries everywhere grapple with similar challenges, the Canadian example may inspire others to follow suit, redrawing the lines of international trade and cooperation. The era of open borders and easy alliances is giving way to a time of strategy, caution, and fierce protection of national assets. To truly understand Canada's bold move today, we need to look back at a remarkable century of US-Canada steel trade, a partnership built on shared resources, mutual dependence, and a spirit of collaboration that shaped both nations. For generations, the border was more a bridge than a barrier, connecting communities and industries on both sides. Canadian iron ore and American coal powered a seamless supply chain, fueling the factories that built the cars, skyscrapers, and infrastructure that define North America. This cross-border flow of raw materials and finished steel was the backbone of economic growth, innovation, and prosperity for both countries. The 1965 Auto Pact and decades later, NAFTA, created a unified market with steel at its very core. These agreements didn't just open borders, they wove together supply chains, making the two economies deeply interdependent. Mills in Hamilton and Sault Ste. Marie developed specialized steel for Detroit's assembly lines, forging deep economic ties and fostering innovation. The steel industry became a symbol of North American cooperation and shared ambition. Generations of workers and their families relied on this predictable flow, building lives and communities around the stability it provided, a living testament to the power of continental cooperation and trust. Free trade agreements eliminated tariffs, cementing the idea of a unified economic bloc. For decades, open borders were seen as a given, and the steel trade flourished under this shared understanding. Canadian producers became indispensable to the US, exporting over 90% of their steel southward. The two countries' industries were so intertwined that disruption seemed almost unthinkable. This integration was long seen as a strength, until now, when uncertainty and tension have begun to overshadow decades of trust. The recent tariff wars mark a fundamental break from this history, undermining the stability and trust that took generations to build. Factories now face uncertainty, and workers worry about the future. Canada's defensive response signals a new era, one where open borders and seamless trade can no longer be taken for granted, and the future of this historic partnership hangs in the balance. The unraveling began in March 2025, when the Trump administration shocked the world by imposing a sweeping 25% tariff on Canadian steel, citing national security concerns. The move sent ripples through the global economy and marked a dramatic shift in the long-standing relationship between the two countries. Canada, once a trusted and reliable partner, was suddenly treated as a foreign adversary. The sense of betrayal was palpable, as decades of cooperation and mutual benefit seemed to unravel overnight. Washington escalated the conflict, doubling tariffs to 50%. This devastating blow crippled Canadian steel producers, slashing production by 30% and putting thousands of jobs at risk. Communities built around steel faced an uncertain future. The U.S. message was clear: old rules no longer applied. The era of predictable trade and trust was over, replaced by a new age of uncertainty and self-interest. As the U.S. market slammed shut, global steel producers, especially China, saw an opportunity. They targeted Canada, threatening to flood its market with cheap steel, further destabilizing the industry and putting even more pressure on Canadian producers. Canadian industry leaders and unions sounded the alarm, warning of an impending crisis. Locked out of their largest export market and undercut at home, the future of Canadian steel looked bleak. Pressure mounted on Prime Minister Carney to act decisively. Industry executives, workers, and unions demanded urgent protection and government intervention to save their livelihoods. The government faced a stark and difficult choice: either step in to save its steel industry, or risk a total collapse that could devastate entire regions and ripple through the national economy. The stage was set for a dramatic Canadian response. No longer willing to be a passive victim of U.S. trade policy, Canada prepared to chart its own course and defend its interests. Canada's bold move would not only protect its steel industry, but also signal a new era of assertiveness and independence on the world stage. In July, Prime Minister Carney unveiled Carney's Gambit, a sweeping strategy to insulate Canada from global trade shocks. Tariff-free import quotas for non-FTA countries, especially China, were slashed by half. Excess imports now face a 50% tariff. An extra 25% anti-circumvention tariff targets steel originally melted and poured in China, even if rerouted through third countries. FTA partners, excluding the US and Mexico, keep tariff-free access up to 2024 levels. Excess faces steep tariffs. All federal contracts now require Canadian-made steel, and a $1 billion support fund will modernize the industry. Carney framed these measures as a step towards self-reliance and industrial resilience. It's a comprehensive package, defensive and offensive, reorienting Canada's industrial strategy for a fragmented world. The aftershocks hit Detroit first, where automakers depend on Canadian steel for just-in-time manufacturing. Despite CUSMA exemptions, market upheaval is unavoidable. Canadian producers now prioritize domestic demand. U.S. automakers face tighter supply and higher prices for advanced steel, risking costly production delays. The electric vehicle sector is especially vulnerable, as specialized steel is critical for lightweight frames and battery casings. Companies may absorb higher costs or pass them to consumers, potentially slowing EV adoption. Industry executives who lobbied against U.S. tariffs now see their worst fears realized. The intricate cross-border supply chain is at risk, with components crossing multiple times before assembly. The less than protectionist measures can backfire, harming the very industries they aim to protect. Detroit's anxiety is a powerful warning about the unintended consequences of trade wars. For Canadian steelmakers, Carney's policy is a lifeline after months of crisis and U.S. tariffs. Import quotas, anti-circumvention tariffs, and procurement rules promise a robust home market and new demand. Industry leaders welcome the measures, but warn that damage has already been done. The $1 billion support fund aims to help companies recover and invest in greener technologies. Yet other Canadian industries, construction, manufacturing, energy, now face higher steel prices and operational costs. The government is betting that industrial sovereignty outweighs these risks. The policy prioritizes resilience over free trade efficiency, gambling on a stronger, self-sufficient economy. The coming years will reveal if protection sparks innovation or leads to complacency and higher costs. Canada's steel policy is part of a global shift toward economic fragmentation and strategic competition. By erecting barriers, Canada joins the US and EU in forming a bloc of protected Western markets, pushing oversupply onto unprotected nations. At the center is China, long accused of subsidizing overproduction and distorting markets. Canada's melted and poured in China tariff is a direct attempt to counter this, aligning with US efforts while defending against US tariffs. This creates a complex dynamic. Canada is both ally and opponent to US trade strategy. The North American supply chain, once seamless, now faces new friction and the risk of further retaliation. The era of quiet cooperation is over. Managed conflict and economic nationalism are the new norm. Canada's move signals a world where strategic blocs and managed trade replace open markets. Reaction to Canada's steel policy is sharply divided. Canadian steel leaders praise it as long overdue protection for a vital industry. US auto executives express anxiety, blaming American tariffs for triggering a lose-lose scenario. Some analysts call Carney's move shrewd, fostering resilience and reducing risky US dependence. Others warn of higher inflation, reduced competitiveness, and possible retaliation. Carney frames the policy as necessary for protecting Canadian workers and adapting to global instability. The debate centers on whether true economic security comes from domestic strength or open markets. The 2022 Stunmite the Sans Nan Fight On. The 2025 steel dispute marks a turning point in Canada-US relations and the global economy. Carney's gambit is a bold step toward economic self-reliance, with far-reaching consequences. Detroit's automakers face uncertainty. Canadian producers see opportunity, but must adapt to new demands. The old equilibrium is gone. Supply chains are being redrawn along geopolitical lines. The saga of steel is a cautionary tale about the risks of protectionism and the fragility of trusted partnerships. The future will require innovation and diplomacy to navigate this new landscape. Will Canada's new walls of steel build strength or deepen division? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for more coverage.